What's going on, everybody? Andrew Thompson here of the Andrew Thompson Interviews YouTube channel. Joining me today is a man who has been a staple in the independent wrestling scene for quite some time. He is one of Canada's favorite sons. Also, one of Canada's favorite sons, man. Also, he's been doing this sport slash entertainment drama that I love covering. He's been doing it for quite some time. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the one and only Daniel Makabe. How you feeling, sir?
I'm doing good, man. I don't know if I'm one of Canada's favorite sons. I appreciate it. Canada's a really big country, and I actually haven't wrestled in huge chunks of it. So I'm hoping to become one of Canada's favorite sons, but I don't know if we're quite there yet. But that's quite the nice introduction, and I'm happy to be with you here on a nice Sunday morning. So yeah, let's get to it.
Yeah, of course I had to throw that in there, man. You got to start the interview all right, man. Got to set the tone for the rest of the interview.
Of course.
But before we jump into it, of course, I'd be remiss not to mention yesterday the news came about, last night the news came about that John Huber, known to many as Brody Lee, and Luke Harper, unfortunately passed away. But among anything else, I think we all know how great of a professional wrestler he was. But I think the thing that really stood out the most is just how many people came out and talked about how good of a dude he was and how good of a father he was. I think that really stood like out amongst anything else, just to see so many people come out and speak about how genuine of a person he was and how many times he helped them, and so on and so forth. I think that just speaks massive volumes about a person when you have so many people willing to go to bat for you in that type of manner. And just blessings to his family. I can only imagine having a child that young and only knowing your father is this big superhero, and then him just not being there anymore. I know that's rough. So I just wanted to start that off and send my blessings to his family. Daniel, if you had anything to add, feel free before we jump into the interview.
I mean, not really. I never met the man. I have lots of mutual friends with him, and everyone is definitely in a state of grieving. The one thing I'll say is, I don't recall seeing my Twitter timeline. When these passings happen, far too frequently. But certainly, someone as young as he is, he's only a couple of years older than I am. But I don't recall seeing, something like this happen where like literally Twitter just stops and everyone is talking about how he was such a great person and sharing memories of being around him, on the indies and WWE and AEW. He kind of worked a lot of places and touched a lot of people. So, very sad story, but, I unfortunately didn't have any personal experience with him, but, 41 or whatever is far too young. That's, really, really sad. Unfortunate news last night for sure.
Yeah, that definitely, man. So yeah, again, blessings to his family, man. I hope all who were, affected by his passing, can grieve and, continue to move forward and, honor that we had him here on this earth, man. So yeah, blessings to his family. But Daniel, man, 2020, as we, kind of just dove into a little bit, it's been quite the year, to say the least. Like, let me ask you this: what have you learned about yourself professionally and personally throughout this whole year? Going into the pandemic, and then as we inch closer to 2021.
I think I've realized how kind of interwoven my psyche is with professional wrestling, for better or for worse. I think not being able to wrestle for the majority of this year, my last matches were in March overseas, and then I didn't wrestle for almost 7 months, and then came back and had the one match in October as a part of the collective against Lee Moriarty, which got a lot of people talking again, and then it was kind of radio silence from me because we have very strong restrictions here in Canada, especially here in British Columbia. So we not only can you not promote shows currently, you can't even train currently. Like the gyms are all closed, and I can't really. I mean, I can cross the U.S. border, but it's not easy. It's quite difficult. So, not being able to wrestle for the majority of the year, right as things were starting to really kind of seemingly happen for me. Yeah, definitely caused some stress. And I like to think I've kind of adapted and I'm in kind of the new routine, whatever the new normal is. That's a term that people have been throwing around a lot in 2020, the new normal. But it's definitely led to some down moments and some, bouts of depression because it's such a huge part of my life. I was really kind of getting into a groove of every weekend going somewhere new, whether it's all over the US or as far as the East Coast of Canada or the East Coast of the US or to Europe. And my weekends were kind of full with seeing all these familiar faces and meeting new friends and new fans and so yeah, that's been an adjustment for sure, and kind of having the self-realization that like, wow, this has become a really important part of your life in the last couple of years as things have started to happen for me. So.
And you mentioned something very important. You talked about mental health. Like normally when I do interviews, I always try to like let that topic come about naturally instead of like bringing it. I kind of just let it flow within the the nature of the conversation. I think that's something very important, man. And I spoke about this. I recently interviewed Anthony Henry, and me and him sort of dove into this, for quite a bit. And we just talked about how we as fans, we see you guys on these shows, right? And you look so happy, right? And you seem like everything is just okay, but like in reality, people have issues. People got stuff that they're going through. You could be seeing somebody walking down the street and they look perfectly fine to you, and they'd be going through hell, and you won't even, you know what I'm saying? You won't even know it. And I think that's something very important that you just spoke about. Like, and specifically going through this pandemic, I know it was just, you had that, like you and many other wrestlers had that gap between March and like, a couple months, like leading into the summer. And then of course, you had the match against Lee Moriarty that you just mentioned. And I know that was a personal favorite of yours. And I saw a lot of people speak very highly of that match. Like just diving into that, like, what do you think made that match so special and like why it stuck out to so many people? Like, do you think it was a combination of you just really itching to get back into the ring and, just really wanted to be back out there? And then of course, Lee Moriarty, I think he had a really solid breakout year in 2020. So like, what were some of the elements that kind of led to that match, being what it was?
I think there's a couple things for sure. Being off for so long, I definitely had a bit of a chip on my shoulder. Like, okay, I need to kind of prove that like I can still do this at a high level. Being in this kind of literally, I mean, it was titled The Collective, but literally a collective weekend of all these promotions and talents and all contained within this one building, 12 shows in 3 days or whatever it was. There was a lot of, I mean, I can't imagine I was the only person who felt this way, but I think people were kind of itching to stand out and have a match that people would talk about, because there were so many matches in that building that weekend that a lot of things were going to get forgotten or kind of lost to time, right? So, I mean, I think we all have a bit of an ego when it comes to this, but like, I'll be honest that my goal was to have the best match that weekend out of all those shows. And so, I was going to do whatever, it took to do so. And luckily I was in there with a guy who everyone's buzzing about, who for my money is the breakout star of 2020 on the independents, and is super talented for someone who's so young. And he's only, he's like 5 years in or something at this point. And he was really the star that weekend. He had 6 matches that weekend, which is crazy, right? And thankfully for me, I was his first match, right? So I got him right when he was his freshest and everything. So, but the other thing, honestly, is, I'm someone who watches a lot of tape and takes a lot of notes, and I always have lots of ideas going. And I've got a file on my phone that's just constantly got a recycling of, not necessarily just stuff I watch wrestling, but, I'll watch MMA, or I'll see something in a movie, or I'll see something walking down the street that will spark an idea in my head, and I'll write it down. And so normally I'm kind of cycling through these ideas as the year is progressing, right? But I had 7 months worth of ideas that had gone unused, right? So I really had kind of the pick of, here's this, like, I don't even know how many ideas I had, probably 50 ideas to kind of, okay, what's going to work best in this context? What's going to pop? What's going to work well with Lee? What's going to, help make this match special and stand out? And then kind of tying it all in at the end is, I just think what we do, and specifically kind of the style that I really do, is just kind of, sadly, it's kind of unique on the current landscape of independent wrestling, and focusing on telling stories through technical wrestling is kind of underrepresented on independent wrestling shows nowadays. And I think, there were other matches that weekend that kind of fell within that same kind of idea. most notably for me was Lee's match versus Jonathan Gresham. But you had wrestlers like Alex Shelley and ACH and all these other great kind of technical wrestlers. But I just think today's kind of indie landscape, when you go back to basics and focus on keeping it simple, but making the simple things matter more, I think that just stands out. And so people sort of saw this match that was really not like anything else that weekend. And it was like, oh, wow, oh, okay, right? And so, but we didn't really do anything that was too, we didn't reinvent the wheel. We just, went out there and we wrestled, right? And so, and in 2020, maybe wrestling is a novel concept. I don't know, but that's always been the, what I hold important to me is the actual wrestling. So.
Right. And I was going to ask you, like, someone that has been doing this for the time that you have been doing it, like, do you think it's like the just how professional wrestling is going to be viewed coming out of the pandemic is going to be so much different, like, or do you think it will be the same as how it is right now? Because I feel like the crowd's attention spans like have maybe, like, in a weird way, like even myself, I feel like my attention span, like for longer matches, have kind of shortened a bit. And I like everything kind of tight and compact. Like, do you think it'll be something similar, or do you think things will kind of revert back to how they used to be coming out of the pandemic?
I think that's just kind of like media in general. I think just in general, we all have kind of shorter attention spans, like I was having this discussion with a friend yesterday about movies that go over 2 hours in length, and I honestly prefer to watch long movies in the theaters because you can't check your phone 10 times, right? Because you're in the, that's rude, right? By the rules of, we all go to the movie theaters. You don't look at your phone. You're not texting. You're not doing whatever, right? You're not checking Twitter while you're watching a theater, with 100 other people in the movie theater, right? But if you're sitting on your couch at home, what's stopping you from hopping on your phone or hopping on your laptop or doing whatever and not really focusing on what's at hand, right? So generally speaking, I think we all have shorter attention spans. Will the pandemic affect it? I think initially, people are just going to be so excited to get back to live wrestling and to be able to experience it now and experience it properly, right? Like Japan's done such a better job than us here in the Western world when it comes to containing things, that they can have like, half audiences in big buildings, like New Japan's running the Tokyo Dome and coming up in like a week, and they're only going to put, 15,000 people in it or whatever, but that's still crazy. I couldn't imagine being able to do that now, right? But they have it under this caveat that they're not allowed to cheer or boo, right? They all have to clap. It's against the rules to actually fully express yourself like you want to, right? So that to me is cool, but it's also just so foreign because, like if I'm at a wrestling show, I want to be able to yell at someone I hate or cheer for someone that I love or whatever, right? So, or chant along. That's something that, that I really appreciate, especially in Europe, because I have kind of tie into soccer. I get the soccer style chants during my matches. And so, I miss that, right? But we can't really have that in today's climate if we're trying, if we're all wearing masks and we're all spread out 6 feet apart. So I think when things initially get back to whatever normal is, I think everyone's going to be really excited. But will we have attention span for 25-minute, technical matches? I mean, I don't know. That might just I think we're just going to have to try and figure it out. I typically don't like having long matches myself anyways, but because I don't want to overstay my welcome. So I kind of know my place and know that like my sweet spot is like 14 to 16 minutes, get in, get out, tell a good story, have some exciting moments, and then let the next people go on and do their thing, right? So,
but you want to know something interesting? I feel like people have really, specifically this year, like I would say over the past 4 or 5 months or so, I feel like people have really grown. Like even if they already had this love for technical wrestling, I feel like that has grown a little bit more because now, like, well, of course, people are starting to have crowds back now, and some promotions have already done that. But like, I feel like not having the crowd to react to those high flying moves, like not having them be there to react to those big moves is kind of like, like it looks cool, but like at the same time, it's not the same as like having a crowd like jump up and scream, or you see somebody in the front row going crazy for what you just did. But I feel like since we're watching it from home, it's like very like I don't know what's about it, but it's like something like very cool to see, like watching somebody break down like the technical aspect of wrestling and like, you know, apply certain holds and like you can I don't know what it is. I can't really explain it, but like opposed to, you know, somebody diving over the top rope and, you know, getting amped up and there's nobody to react to. It's kind of like, you get what I'm saying?
I think that, and I wasn't someone who had to do this because I didn't really wrestle much during all of this, but the, you know, more TV style wrestlers, the guys who were going in on WWE and AEW week in and week out, they kind of had to figure out, okay, how are we going to work? You know, we don't have anyone to react to or play off of. We literally only have the cameras and the people at home, and we can't hear the people at home, right? You know, we just have to imagine how they're reacting, right? So I think you nailed it on the head. The guys who really rely on big moments and big high spots and flashy moves, I can't imagine doing like a huge dive and wiping out, you know, the guy on the floor and then coming up. And normally there's the front row right there, and they're amped up, and maybe you high five someone and you can see all these people up on their feet. But you're literally, you know, you've wiped this guy out, you stand up and it's just silence. I couldn't imagine, right? It just doesn't, there's a disconnect there, right? So the guys from me who kind of learned how to really work the best within the confines of 2020 wrestling are the guys who were the technicians, because, you know, that's the other thing. It kind of goes both ways. With no fans there and no kind of, you know, crowd noises and interacting, now all the focus is on what's going on in the ring, right? Two guys going hold for hold. And if there is, if you're not working a really like a snug style, or you're not really, if there's a lot of, what's the word? I always use the term real estate, but you know, if you're coming up and you're not hitting the guy and there's, you know, noticeable gaps in your strikes or your movements, you know, because we're so focused on what's going on in the ring now, because we don't have any of the distractions, right? We don't have fans. We don't have that kind of element of pro wrestling. That stuff had to be tightened up. And so the guys who did it the best were the Daniel Bryans, were the Cesaros, were the Drew Gulaks, those guys who have a really strong base when it comes to technical wrestling and grappling. And to me, that was the stuff that held up the best, I'll say, early on in the pandemic, you know, in like April, May, when we were sort of adjusting to, okay, this is pro wrestling now. We don't have any fans. These guys are just working in an empty building. What's going to work and what's not going to work. And those guys who have the really kind of meat and potatoes, kind of snug technical style, for me, they were having the best matches, because there was that realism translated better with no fans, as opposed to, you know, the kind of hyper sensationalized kind of, you know, high spots and big moves and big movements and whatever. That stuff I feel really needs people to react, and just kind of a give and take. So yeah, for me, technical wrestling, you know, kind of reigned supreme at the beginning of the pandemic, but now as things have kind of opened up a little bit more, obviously the big companies are exclusively running in Florida, where you can seemingly get away with whatever. And so they're able to have fans there who are, some people that can react and they can kind of work the style that they were working beforehand, right?
And you mentioned a couple of names that I think people have really thrived during this, you know, this pandemic era of wrestling. Like names like Jonathan Gresham, I've really enjoyed his work throughout the pandemic. Tracy Williams, you know, since Ring of Honor got started back up. I think Shayna Baszler has done like a really solid job. I think this, like, just for her speaking about her, not to dive too much into it, but I think her, the way that she wrestles, I feel like it really matches up well with like that no crowd atmosphere, because I feel like they've been able to focus, like even the camera work, they've been able to focus more on like, you know, her certain strikes and like the way that she, you know, kind of manipulates the arm and all of that stuff, opposed to, you know, you having a live crowd there trying to do that, and then the person up in the bleachers can't really see what she's doing, and they're just like, quote unquote, she's boring, you know, because they don't see what she's doing, opposed to, you know, now we're watching at home and we get to see her looking like she snapped somebody's arm in half. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's like one of the benefits of, you know, this pandemic era of wrestling. But like, you know, you go ahead and add something if you wanted to add in.
Oh, just quick. I mean, I completely relate to that, and that's why I never really had the goal of being like what I call a big room wrestler, like working in arenas, because for me, you know, it's all about those little things and that the technique and the kind of intricacies and as simple as things of where are your hands going, what's going on, you know, just the kind of mechanics of it all. And for my own personal experience as a fan also, I love being in like a small intimate setting where like you can reach out and literally touch the ring, you know, being at an independent, and you can see all, you know, all the goings on in a technical match like that. Not, or you can hear people's breathing, you know, that, you know, it's so kind of up close and personal. And to me, that's just such more of an enjoyable experience, and it feels more like you're part of the show than like, obviously there's something to being in a big arena with, you know, like at a WrestleMania or something with all of the pyro and the huge sets and, you know, 50,000 people or whatever. Like that's a different kind of experience, right?
Right.
But that sort of experience doesn't necessarily suit certain styles of wrestling for my money. And like you mentioned, like people like Shayna have really kind of risen to the occasion in this time frame, just like the Ring of Honor bringing back the Pure title. I think this was like a perfect timing for them to come back with that tournament, and it was like, okay, now we're going to focus on this, and it brought a little bit more of an importance to the style. I just like the presentation in general. I thought they did a really good job with that tournament, and that was something I was following along really closely. It helped. I had a lot of people that I consider, you know, peers or friends that were in that tournament, and so I was happy to get to see how they were doing through all of this. So, and people like you mentioned, like Hot Sauce and Gresham, who I think are kind of the best on the independents at that style. So.
And, you know, going back to the live crowds, man, I know prior to the pandemic, you were doing some stuff with wXW. I know that wasn't your first go around with them earlier this year. I think you won the Ambition series that they do. And I think that was around the time of the 16 karat gold weekend. I know a lot of, like, I know you participated in that weekend before. Like, just tell me about just the atmosphere of those weekends, man. Cause I know those crowds are just like on it 24/7, like never a dull moment. Like, just tell me your experience there, man, and just the overall vibes.
So it was my second time going over for wXW. It was actually my first 16 karat weekend.
Okay.
So,
okay.
And 16 karat is their biggest weekend of the year, right? So it's like, there's nothing, I mean, I guess it's comparative to like a WrestleMania weekend where you can go to shows, you know, all day for like four or five straight days, you know, right? So they run this big building it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. It just looks like it's like this big kind of warehouse looking thing called the Turban Halla. But they do such a good job of you know, the lights and the set and the stage and the video screens that it feels like this massive event. And they were the biggest crowds I'd ever worked in front of. You know, there was like 1,100 each night, and I think the Saturday night was 1,600 people, which for independent wrestling, that's pretty big when I'm used to working in front of maybe 200 people. So, yeah, you're quite right. I did win the Ambition tournament that weekend, Ambition 12, which was huge. I mean, it was my third time doing an Ambition tournament for them, which for those not aware, it's more of like a shoot style wrestling. You know, kind of like a UFC, you know, it's submissions and amateur wrestling and hard strikes. You can only win by submission or knockout. And to win the tournament, you got to win 3 matches back to back to back, like the old school one night, 8-man tournaments. So, the fact that they had the confidence in me to go all the way and win the thing was amazing. As someone who's such a fan of the style, and the amount of people, you know, like we all got a shirt at the beginning of that weekend, like with the Ambition logo on it. And they sort of, okay, can you wear this during the kind of pre-show ceremony where you're all going to come out? And the faces on this shirt, it's like Tim Thatcher, Walter, Zack Sabre, Bryan Danielson, you know, I'm trying to think of some other ones, but all previous winners of this tournament. And now it's like, oh, and I'm one of those
Now
guys
your
too,
face on
like,
it.
I mean, maybe next year if
All right,
they come out
right.
with a new shirt, my face will be on it, right? So,
Mm.
I mean, that's crazy, to be in the same kind of ballpark as those guys is humbling. So, honestly, I will say the there's two kind of areas that have really taken to me outside of the Northwest, where I predominantly wrestle here in kind of Vancouver, Seattle, Portland. Those are my three kind of main cities. But the U.S. South, for some reason, has really taken to me. So I've wrestled a lot in Tennessee, but Europe for sure. Germany and England have kind of become home away from homes, and I think they just appreciate the style a little bit more. Obviously, because my gear has all the nods to soccer or football, as they call it. So I think all the football fans over there, can kind of engage in it. Sometimes for the good, sometimes for the bad. I have to be really mindful of what I wear over there, because depending on the crowd, I might be wearing the shirt of a team that they absolutely hate. And maybe I want them to cheer me. Maybe I'm the baby face, right? And they're going to go out and go, well, this guy sucks. He supports this team. Why are we cheering for him? Right? So I have to, my thought process isn't always the best when I'm over there. I need to be really mindful of that. And I had instances of that when I was over for 16 karat, unfortunately. But that was, I mean, amazing. That tournament has such a history, and I wrestled Eddie Kingston, who, shortly thereafter went on and got signed to AEW, and getting to work with him was amazing. So, and then, kind of the real highlight of that weekend was getting to wrestle Daisuke Ikeda and Yuki Ishikawa, who are two legendary Japanese wrestlers of the kind of shoot style in the 90s and early 2000s, people that I've looked up to and I've been watching tapes of for over 20 years. And the fact that I got to wrestle them in Germany was huge. So, I mean, that weekend was definitely a centerpiece. And as you mentioned, it was literally the weekend before everything shut down.
Yeah.
And literally the WXW weekend ended on Sunday night, and Monday morning, the German government said, no more events with fans over 1,000 people in attendance. And so if they had put that mandate into place 3 days earlier, none of it would have happened. None of it would have happened.
It's crazy.
So the timing of everything was crazy. And then being in Europe, I was in Europe for another week after that, while everything in the US and Canada was shutting down. And I had, my family saying, okay, you need to come home now. You might not be able to get back into the country. And, I wasn't too concerned. I figured, well, they're obviously going to let me back in. I'm a citizen of Canada. They're going to let me back into Canada. But because England was a little bit slower to adopt kind of and I had a couple of matches in England after the rest of Europe had been shut down and after Canada had been shut down. And so I had 3 matches in England the following weekend, and then I flew back to Canada. So it was interesting because things in England were just kind of same as always, where while I'm watching the news and seeing the rest of the world kind of locking down. So it was a weird weekend. And then I came back to Canada and I had to quarantine for 2 weeks before I was allowed to go back to work my regular job. So yeah. And having said all of that now, that feels like a million lifetimes
Man,
ago.
oh my goodness. I'm telling you that, like, doesn't it seem like anything that was like more than like 5-6 months ago just seemed like it seems like forever ago, man.
Years ago.
Like I guess it's like highlights and stuff that I see on Twitter, like little clips and stuff that I see that people be like, oh, this happened in January. I'd be like, January? Like, like when was January, man? Like, it was like this year has been like we said at the top, quite the year. But
it's been the longest year ever, for sure.
100%, man. But back in August, man, I interviewed somebody who spoke very, very highly of you, man. You guys wrestled at the Pizza Party show back in WrestleMania weekend last year, 2019.
Oh.
That's Mr. Fred Yehi, man. I interviewed him. He had some very very kind words to say about you, and just your in-ring work, and you just being a cool dude overall. So I just wanted to relay that to you. I know you guys were supposed to have a rematch for the same promotion this year before the shutdown happened. But yeah, any words about Fred Yehi about you guys working together?
Fred Yehi is criminally underrated. The fact that he's not signed to a major promotion. He's so good and very smart. He's like one of the strongest people I've ever been in there. Like I'm probably a good 4 or 5 inches taller than Fred, and he was tossing me around like I was a child, and I didn't have a choice in the matter. Like so strong and so much energy and just like cardio for days. So we did wrestle. That was kind of a big breakout for me, actually, getting to wrestle Fred in kind of New Jersey right before WrestleMania last year in New York, New Jersey area for Pizza Party's first show. That was huge. And the fact that, I mean, we kind of hit it off real well, and he's a super nice guy. And I was really looking forward to the rematch. We were supposed to wrestle this past April in Tampa, like you mentioned, for Pizza Party's like 1-year anniversary show, kind of a nod back to the first time. And so, Fred Yehi's work is so good. It's so, going back when I'm talking about guys like Daniel Bryan and Drew Gulak and those guys who really had the standout matches for me early in the pandemic. Fred Yehi is a guy like that who works so snug and so realistic, and is he's just so good at what he does. And if for those watching at home and you yourself, if you have not seen it, Fred Yehi had a match sometime in the summer. I can't remember exactly when it was, against Jeremy Wyatt.
Yep.
Yeah, the Iron Man match with Jeremy Wyatt from that would have been done with
what's the St. Louis Anarchy? I think that's what it was.
Yeah, so it's St. Louis Anarchy, who run in kind of eastern Missouri / Illinois, and then there's oh god, it's gonna kill me. There's a promotion based in Kansas City that the two of them have wrestled for. Oh, why can't I remember it? Anyways,
I think I know what you're talking about, but
it was a co-promotion with those two promotions.
It's on YouTube.
It's on YouTube. They raised a bunch of money for charity. If they ever see this, they're gonna kill me because I know they've wanted to book me there. But anyways, Jeremy Wyatt and Fred Yehi had for money one of the best matches all year anywhere in that 60-minute Ironman, and something that actually, we're talking about people's attention spans, and a 60-minute Ironman is quite the undertaking to watch. But for me, that match just flew by because of just how good and realistic the work was in it, and how much I respect both those guys. Fred Yehi and Jeremy Wyatt are both guys. I haven't wrestled Wyatt. I only met him just this past February when I went to St. Louis for St. Louis Anarchy for a tournament for them. And then Fred, who I'd worked previously, like we mentioned, both those guys, for my money, are two of the best out there.
Yeah, no doubt, man. I got the opportunity to see that match, of course, on YouTube, and like the whole 60 minutes did kind of go by really fast, and I just enjoyed it. I enjoyed like the commentary. They really kind of made that match smoother, but like just like seeing Fred, like I told him this even when I spoke to him. I was like, you like just a little bit too humble. Like just a little bit too humble, because he doesn't. I think when other people tell him how good he is, like to him it's just like I'm just doing my thing. But like I think they just brought it up. Like I think Fred is criminally underrated, and like the fact that he isn't signed is like hopefully Ring of Honor jumps on that. That's kind of it seems like the direction.
I think so.
Yeah,
I like he was in the they did the tag, like the Pure Rules tag on the last pay-per-view, and that match was great. So there's so many good wrestlers who work that style. So
many, man. But like I know you did a lot of shows for the 3-2-1 battle promotion out in Seattle, Washington. I know you mentioned that earlier. Like just tell me how you kind of got started with that remote, because I know you did a lot of shows for them. Of course they brought you back, of course, because you're good, obviously. But like what led to that that kind of consistent relationship as far as you being like a constant in that promotion?
I mean, we could do another whole interview just on my time with that promotion. I've got a long history with that promotion. I mean, friends that I knew through various kind of past lives were the ones who kind of started that promotion years and years ago. I first started working for them in 2014, and kind of was along for the ride as that promotion grew. When we originally started working for 3-2-1, there'd be a carload of guys coming down from Canada to work for those shows. they couldn't even charge admission because Washington State had weird legislation and rules. And so the original shows were kind of illegal, to be perfectly honest. For the first 3 years that I worked there, it was all kind of under the table, word of mouth. They didn't even really advertise because they couldn't legally charge admission. To see it grow to where it became kind of a destination promotion for, not only people in the Northwest kind of wanting to work there, but people all over the US reaching out to try and get work there, and to be able to bring in some huge names from all over independent wrestling. I mean, I'm actually working on a project myself talking about kind of my lineage and my history within 321 over the 6 years that I worked for that promotion. That'll come out sometime in the future. But it just became something where, like I was there since the beginning, and I was there for the growth, and they gave me my biggest opportunity ever. They were the ones who originally booked me against Timothy Thatcher. And, that match kind of went viral. And that's what led to me breaking out and getting all the opportunities that I have in the last 3 years. And for me, it was kind of a give and take. They gave me that big opportunity and kind of put me on the platform to expand beyond 321. And then in return, my goal was to always shine a light on 321 and to always point out, like, yes, this is where I came from. And if you want to watch my matches, please put your eyeballs on them. But also there's a ton of talent here in the Pacific Northwest, Seattle, but also Vancouver, Portland, surrounding areas that don't get out of the Pacific Northwest because we're so far removed from the rest of the independent wrestling landscape. If I want to drive to the next major city in Canada, which is Calgary, it's a 12-hour drive. And if you want to drive south beyond Seattle, Portland to the next kind of major area, we're talking like San Francisco Bay Area, Northern California, it's a 12-hour drive. And so we're kind of our own little pocket in the Northwest of North America. And so much of the rest of the independent wrestling world don't really know about us. And so 321 Battle for me was something that was beginning to pick up steam, where people were watching, and people from not just the rest of North America, but people from all over the world. And, they gave me a platform to have some of the biggest matches of my life, the series with Tim Thatcher, my match against Jonathan Gresham. I got to wrestle Negro Navarro, who's a legend of the Lucha Libre kind of mat wrestling style. Shotzi Blackheart before she went on to do bigger and better things. And then, of course, I guess most famously, referee Aubrey Edwards, now on AEW. That's where she trained, and that's where I met her. And she was the referee for some of my biggest matches. And she's someone I consider a really good friend. And so that promotion was just everything. Without 321 Battle, you're not interviewing me here right now. No one outside of the Pacific Northwest knows who I am. And so we had very much a mutually beneficial relationship, I'll say, because 321 meant everything to me, and in turn, I tried to bring more attention to 321. Unfortunately, as is the case with a lot of places, earlier this year, they're no longer a promotion, right? Due to, speaking out allegations and some issues with management and whatever. And so it's unfortunate because it was a really good place for people to kind of grow and learn their craft and work in front of a crowd that was always receptive. That was the one thing about 321 Battle, is that they didn't start out as wrestling fans. They started out as 321 Battle fans. They weren't, a lot of the people going to those shows, that was their first time ever going to an independent wrestling show. They were there because it was just kind of a cool thing to do on a Friday night in a hip part of Seattle. And they grew to love the characters, and they grew to love independent wrestling. And it was just an amazing atmosphere. I don't think it'll ever be recreated, but I know that there's so much talent here in the Northwest that something new will pop up, in its place once we're back to running shows in front of audiences. Because Washington State has had nothing. They've been really strict with regulations, so they haven't had any shows during the pandemic. But something will happen. When we're back to normal. Believe me, Seattle is a home away from home for me, and it's the market that really took to me more so than Vancouver, where I live, even, honestly. And there's still some great promotions in the Seattle area. Without a Cause is a promotion that I work for there, and Defy, of course, is probably the biggest promotion in Seattle. And I made my debut for them in January, and going forward, when we're back to running shows, I'm sure you'll see me pop up on some of their shows in the future. So Seattle definitely has my heart, and I miss it dearly because I was spending every other weekend in Seattle, and now I haven't been able to drive to Seattle since March. So it's definitely a weird change of things. But yeah, you hit the nail on the head. 3-2-1 Battle was the most important promotion and a huge part of my life, for sure.
Like, do you ever sit back sometimes and think, like, had I not gone to 3-2 Battle, had I not been a part of that, like, where would my life be at right now? Like, where would my wrestling life be at right now? Because, like, I always think back sometimes, like, even, like, I remember when I first started in writing and interviewing, it was a guy named Frank, and he got me started, and he gave me a chance. I had, I'm talking about, zero experience, like, none.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was doing, but he just was like, hey, I'm gonna give you a shot. I'm gonna let you try. We'll see how you do, and then I'm gonna let you fly from there. And he kind of let me like fly on my own. He kind of let me make my own mistakes, and then of course I got better over time and stuff like that. And like I always think back to, had he easily just told me, oh no, you don't have any experience, sorry, I can't do nothing for you, probably be doing something completely different right now. And like it's always like those little things that could like literally change your life from like just from start to finish. And it's crazy just like even hearing your story and just hearing how much 3-2-1 impacted you. Like it's just crazy to think how had you went somewhere else or had you went to another state or another promotion, maybe things would have been different. But like they really sort of helped you, sort of navigate the way that you wanted to take your career. And I feel like that's a really important thing, man. So I'm glad that you got to experience them, all the way up into their, presumably their final days as a promotion.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I probably wouldn't be, I certainly wouldn't be where I am now, getting to, here we are talking about me being in Germany wrestling in front of, 1,500 people or whatever. There's no way that happens otherwise. And so, yeah, no, I don't think I wouldn't be an independent wrestler if it wasn't, for that, because even when those shows were starting, I was working maybe once a month, once every other month. It was just kind of like, I got trained years and years and years ago, back in 2003, and independent wrestling really wasn't happening for me. And so I was just kind of moved on and did other things. I play music. I had other hobbies. I had other interests. I still loved wrestling. Of course, it's no secret, I did backyard wrestling during, that early period as well. Mm-hmm. And 3-2-1 just sort of seemed like a thing that like, oh, this is a fun thing to do every so often, just, to see some friends and work in front of a little bit of a crowd. And then just the lengths that it's taken me, I never would have imagined it. And there's no replacing it. Like the last 6 years would have been completely different. Maybe, right. I mean, I had some relationship sacrifice in the process, so maybe that those would have ended up differently too. But I'm not going to complain about where I ended up. Everything happens for a reason, and I'm quite happy now. So
right. But like you mentioned that, of course you did have a career in music. You still do got a career in music. But like, how did that where did that passion come from? I know you did play a couple of shows. I saw some I think you posted some photos on your Twitter page. I know you had some events and stuff like that. Like, just tell me like how that passion for music kind of sparked and how it kind of led you down this road, and you kind of blend the two, music.
Yeah, I try to blend the two, and there's a lot of similarities between the two, especially in like the kind of DIY ethos of like independent wrestling and being playing in punk bands and booking your own shows and finding your own venues and being your own promoter. You kind of have to do the same thing if you're an independent wrestler and you want to get out there. You have to be your own promoter. You have to be the one to spread the word, right? It helps if someone takes a shining to you and goes, oh wow, this person offers something, right? But first and foremost, it comes down to you, right? So I mean, music is something that's been important in my life since forever. I mean, my parents weren't particularly musical, but they definitely had some decent taste, and got me listening to stuff like the Beatles and Simon and Garfunkel, and kind of lots of 60s and 70s kind of stuff as a child. But it wasn't really until my teenage years that I was more drawn to kind of punk music, which is kind of where I've ended up playing in punk bands and punk adjacent bands. Honestly, it's funny, the thing, I started playing guitar when I was a teenager, just because that's the thing that teenagers want to do. But I really picked up the guitar more seriously when I had, early on in my career, after I had trained and had some pro matches, I had a pretty serious back injury that sidelined me for a couple of years. And so I needed something to fill that creative gap for me, because, pro wrestling is obviously very physical, but for me, more than anything, it's a creative outlet. And so I needed something to kind of harness that energy in. And so I was like, well, let's play the guitar more seriously. Like, let's actually do something with this. Let's figure out, let's get better. Let's practice. Let's use this as an instrument to, both figuratively and literally, to be a way to express myself. And so that just kind of led me to, I was going to local punk and hardcore shows, and I met my group of friends who I've kind of fallen in with, and now I've played in bands with them for upwards of like 10 years. I've played in a bunch of different bands with a lot of the same people, because you find people that you have good chemistry with, that you have a good rapport with, and so those, being around those guys, I've gotten to release records and play on things, which that was a big big goal for me. And then, the thing that you probably saw me mention was, the kind of the coolest thing I've done musically is we did a tour of Cuba in 2017.
Ooh, okay.
And we were able to play like 2 weeks worth of shows on the island, and bring a lot of gear and equipment to the people there, because it's so hard for them to get good musical equipment on the island for various reasons, economic reasons, but also, the trade embargo with the United States. Obviously, it's hard for them to get stuff. So we were able to bring guitars, amplifiers, drums, everything that we got through donations and through crowdsourcing. And we left all of that gear for them on the island to try and build up a community, because music's been so important to me and to us. And so we know how important it can be for the people there in Cuba. So that was a huge experience for me, that I kind of went into that a little bit on Twitter recently. If anyone's listening and wants to check that out, I posted some stories and some pictures. So
I think that's cool, man. That's a cool experience that you met. Like, and something like this, that really stuck out to me about what you just said was like finding another outlet to express that creativity during that kind of down period of your career. And we've kind of seen that like happening a lot this year with the pandemic. Like, we seen a lot of wrestlers jump into streaming, like getting into YouTube more, like getting into other forms of outlet, and just like, of course, all of you guys just genuinely love professional wrestling. Like, it's something you guys just love doing. Like, but at the same time, I'm starting to notice a lot of wrestlers kind of, okay, what can I do once this career is over? Like, once I'm done with this, what can I do next? And like, you've seen a lot of, they've become like full-time Twitch streamers, man, and making like a decent living off of doing that. And I think that's really cool. You've seen wrestlers jump into acting and, getting on TV shows and stuff like that. And I think that's really cool, man, to start to see this way of thinking that more wrestlers are starting to take upon themselves. It's like, okay, yes, I love professional wrestling. If I could do this forever without hurting myself, I would do it forever. But at the same time, it's like, you know what? I can do other things, and I can get myself out there, and I can start, treating myself like a business, opposed to the old, more, I wouldn't say the old, I would say like maybe 2 decades ago, where it was just like professional wrestling from start to finish, and that's it. Like, but I think that's really cool, like the way the mindset has changed of, being a professional wrestler. And like, again, like, it's not like you guys are just like, oh, I'm gonna just leave the business high and dry. It's like, no, man, there are other things out there that I know that I am capable of doing, and I want to take advantage of those things.
We are well-rounded individuals for the most part. Yeah, we have other interests and passions, and definitely we're not just what you see on your video screen or whatever. And I think you're quite right with the kind of the current age of social media. We're able to find out more about who we are as people and what makes us tick, right? And honestly, that's led to, you know, me kind of reaching out and becoming friends with other pro wrestlers that aren't from my area, because, you know, and that in turn leads to, you know, hey, these guys have a similar kind of punk rock ethos that I have. Oh, well, now they're going to book me on their show. You know, it's all networking. It's all, you know, it's all kind of intertwined. Right. So, but I mean, absolutely, you know, that, you know, music's probably been in my life more than, or just as long as wrestling has been. So they're both very important to me, and I'm able to do one a lot longer than the other, I'm sure. But in the meantime, I'm happy to do both. So.
And you know, going back into the music, like, let me ask you this: how important, like, from a scale of 1 to 10, do you think a wrestler's entrance music is to their overall persona? I feel like that's probably like one of the more underrated things about, like, if your theme song is a hit, then 9 times out of 10, like, if you could at least get people to chant along with you, then, you know, you'll be all right.
So that's huge. It's really huge. So prior to kind of the current kind of, you know, wrestling genius persona that I taken upon the last couple of years, prior to that, when I first started to really break and things were starting to happen for me in 3-2-1 battle, kind of centered around that first Timothy Thatcher match. I was the Wizard of Queen's Park, Daniel Makabe, babyface. Everyone in Seattle was on board. They wanted to see me vanquish this, you know, evil outsider, Timothy Thatcher. Part of the whole package was I did come out to a song called Teenage Kicks by this punk band from the Northern Ireland called The Undertones, 70s punk song, but it's like super catchy, just has this amazing beat that kicks in. And like, no lie, the entire building in Seattle, they would be dancing along and singing along. And it was like a huge part of the presentation that I would come out and the entire building would just be with me, and they would be like so into the song. And so, you know, subsequently a few months later, I did kind of a big heel turn and went with this current kind of gimmick and kind of persona where it's very serious and very focused on technical wrestling and being very, what's the word I'm looking for? You know, not showing a lot of emotion in the face. The wrestling genius.
Yeah.
I needed something completely opposite of that, because I didn't want people come, you know, dancing along and getting into the song and the music, and here I am trying to be like a dickhead, right? So that's why, you know, I made the change to the theme that I use now, which is an instrumental piece by a Canadian band called Godspeed You Black Emperor, who, you know, there's no beat, there's no drums, there's no vocals. It's just kind of white noise. And to some people, it's like, well, what the hell is this? This isn't entrance music. And to me, it was, you know, I wanted something that, you know, actually created a reaction in people that when they heard it, they were annoyed, they were frustrated, and that they would associate that feeling with, here comes this asshole that we're, you know, now we're going to boo him because we don't want to see him and we hate his song, right? It's not necessarily, it's not grating or annoying. Like, it's not like harsh noise or feedback or anything like that, but it just sets this weird kind of tone of, it puts people in a weird headspace. Okay, what are we about to see? And it's different than anyone else on the independents or wrestling in general from what I've experienced. So, but I know for a lot of people in, you know, entrance music, it's something that they personally use to really like psych themselves up and get ready for the match, you know, and they can have that kind of connection where if it's got, you know, if it's some song that's got some big drop and they come out to it and the fans kind of get amped up and they're everyone's in simpatico. I mean, that's huge, right? You know, that's what you strive for. You strive for people singing along to your theme, or like, they hear the opening bars of your theme and they're immediately on their feet. They have that visceral reaction like, oh, damn, here comes so-and-so. Like, I
Right.
am ready for this, right? And like, I kind of want that same reaction too, but I want that, I wanted the,
In the
oh,
opposite way.
and
Right.
so it kind of goes both ways. It's kind of, oh shit, here he comes. But as things have progressed and people, more and more, have become more in demand all over the world, it's sort of, they hear that tone and they go, oh shit, here comes the guy who's going to tie the student to knots. We're going to see something really special here, as people, they might hate the character,
Right.
but they respect the in-ring work. Right. And so they know, like, oh shit, we're going to see something now. Here's this weird ass song. I don't know what this is, but we're in for something. So
I wanted to ask you that, I like some of the stuff that you add into what you're saying, because like it really, like, so when you say certain stuff that I've noticed throughout this interview, like it makes me think of other stuff, and like I kind of like how that, how that dynamic is. But like, is it hard sometimes to like be like, especially in this age, like this social media age, like when people know that you're like a good dude or like that you're a good person, like is it hard to kind of like portray that, that bad guy, bad girl type of character? Like, is it difficult? It's like even like we've seen so many people, man, like they're like we hear so many stories like today about how some of these people are like the nicest people behind the scenes, and then they go on a character and they gotta tell the people how they hate them and all this stuff. And then people just don't they don't like, they're like, you be like, I hate the people, and the crowd goes they go start going crazy for them. So like I think that's like, I was just curious, like how do you kind of navigate that type of thing? Like, what would people know that you're a cool dude, so they kind of yeah, oh yeah, Daniel hates us, but whatever type thing.
I think we're at the point where fans are smart, and
Yeah.
they can determine the difference between performance and real life. And so I don't find it that hard just to be able to flip a switch and be, basically for me, I'm in front of the cameras. Now the switch is flipped, and
Right.
I'm Daniel Makabe, wrestling genius, right? And if my opponent's there, I'm going to have disdain for them. If the fans are there, I'm going to whatever, I'm going to react accordingly. I think part of it helps is that like when I'm in the ring and I'm not wearing glasses, like I am truly blind. Like I'm not, I can't really see what's going on. A lot of it is just, based on my other senses and hearing. So
Right.
if someone in the crowd is not reacting how I want them to react, or if they're making a face at me, I can't really see what's happening anyway. So, all of that in front of the camera is one thing, but if you were to come up and say hello to me at the merchandise table, or as people are just kind of mingling after the show, the performance is over, right?
Right.
Like, and there's certain things, like I don't really like to hang out with my opponent in front of the public.
Okay.
That's something that I still like
That's
to kind of
different.
keep separate.
Mm-hmm.
But you came to see a performance, and we all kind of know what this is nowadays, right? And so like, if you want to come and say hello and buy a t-shirt or get a picture or just show some, congratulation, I'm going to be appreciative, and I'm going to be a real person with you, right? Because there's nothing worse than going to say like hello to a wrestler and they're in character. Like, that's just like, in 2020, that's just so bizarre nowadays. That just doesn't work. So, like, we're all real human beings too, right? And for some people, I get it. Some people that doesn't work for them, right? They're, maybe they're introverted or whatever. And you'll see there's a lot of pro wrestlers out there who don't like to go, work the merch table and say hello to the fans and take pictures. But for me, coming up as, I was a fan first and foremost, right? As a kid, as a teenager, I was going to independent wrestling shows, and I loved being able to, meet these guys, buy a t-shirt from them, get a picture, shake their hand, whatever, right? So the fact that now I'm on the other end of the table and I'm able to provide that experience for people, and like, there's also a cost, like they buy merch from us that helps keep us going, right? I mean, that's one of the big, things about independent wrestling is you honestly, you earn more money from your merchandise than you do a lot of the times from the actual pay for the match, right? So I'm appreciative of people who want to support me, and so I want to make sure that I show my gratitude for them, and they have whatever experience they're wanting, whether, you know, they just want to come up and say, hey, you're awesome, or if they want to get a picture with me or buy a shirt, you know, I want to make sure that, you know, that I'm showing them the respect and appreciation that I did, you know, when I was in their situation. Right. So
Right.
for me, the disconnect is easy. I'm able to be a dickhead in front of the crowd and in front of the cameras, and then just be me. And, you know, I try to be an earnest, down to earth guy in real life. And so I want people to be able to experience that as well, I guess. So.
Right. And one thing I do gotta ask you the hard hitting questions. You know, I wouldn't be doing my job if I was
Sure, sure.
gotta ask you the hard hitting questions. But this one I've seen you in a few of these conversations. And it's quite the big question, Daniel. So I hope you're ready, man. So are you a
Okay.
part of Faye Jackson's wholesome squad or her creep squad? I need to know. Wholesome gang or creep squad.
Yeah. So I think Shug D is the leader of the Wholesome Gang, and Faye is the leader of the Creep Squad. So, oh God, it's I've seen some people, like, I think Willow Nightingale mentioned that she kind of rides the line between the two, right? You know, there's days where she's like, okay, Wholesome Gang or no Creep Squad. So, you know what? I met Faye at that WrestleMania weekend show with Freddie, where I wrestled Freddie Yehi for Pizza Party. That's the first time I met Faye Jackson, and we've run into each other a couple times subsequently. You know, we worked in a 10 person tag that weekend for GCW. She was in Germany the first time I went over to Germany.
She was in WXW. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, she went over there for about a month, and she actually lived in Germany for a little bit of time and stayed at the school and was training and working their shows. And so, you know, I've only met Shug the one time. If I'm being honest, do I fit better in with the Wholesome Gang than I do the Creep Squad? Probably, yeah. But Faye Jackson is a sweetheart, and I love being around her. It's always nice to run into her and get to catch up. So I might have to abstain from the question, but if I'm being honest, I'd say Daniel Makabe, Wholesome Gang, probably is where I belong. Yeah.
There we go. You heard it here first, folks. The
Yep.
confirmed story right here, the exclusive. Daniel Makabe has picked his side. But
Yep.
man, I write for Post Wrestling. I think I remember back in September of, I want to say 2019. I think you did a podcast on Post with the British Wrestling Experience with Martin, Benno, and Jamesy. I know if y'all previewed the OTT show. I can't remember which one it was, but I remember that, and I was like, that was kind of like the first time. Of course, I have heard of you previously, but like after that, I kind of did like you start doing the deep dives, you start looking at people's stuff on YouTube and stuff like that, and I was like, I like this dude, man. I like his style of in-ring wrestling. So that's kind of like what led to me sort of reaching out, because I remember I was going through the archives a little bit, and I was like,
Yep.
reach out to Daniel Makabe, man. Let me see what he up to these days. But yeah, it was cool. It was cool to kind of have that already established connection. So I guess that's the right term, like that, you already been affiliated with Post in some way doing a podcast.
And I you know what, I worked in Toronto. SummerSlam weekend last year was in Toronto, and so I worked for a couple shows for WXW and OWE in Toronto, and I met John Pollock and I met WH Park, those guys in Toronto, and had a nice conversation with both of them, and subsequently I've done a couple podcasts with WH Park as well on Post. So
that's cool, man.
I think Post does good work, and I like all those guys a lot, and I consider WH Park to be a friend, and James Z to be a friend, and so yeah, I'm happy to do anything affiliated with them, and I'd love to work in Toronto more often when things kind of get back to normal too. But yeah, Post does good work, and you're seemingly doing good work yourself. So I appreciate the opportunity and you reaching out to me, man.
There's no problem, man. I appreciate you taking the time to do it. But like, of course, you mentioned it earlier. We got to talk about the series of matches, the trilogy between Daniel Makabe and Timothy Thatcher. Like, I feel like both of you guys' styles like really mesh really well, similar to how kind of it was with Fred Yehi. Like, you guys do really just have that. I don't know what it is, man. Like, you guys just have that thing when you get in the ring and it works. And I feel like you guys kind of, specifically speaking on you and Thatcher, you guys just had something different in the ring. Like, I remember I think it was the second of the second of the matches that you guys had, and like you guys really started off like just kind of feeling each other out, and it was like the thing that was so kind of cool about it was because you guys had previously had a match, and then like it was kind of the same mindset of like, you know what, let me like just specifically speaking about like how you guys kind of, I'm guessing how you guys kind of map the match out. It's like I'm gonna lay back and I'm gonna see what this dude gonna do first because whoever gets a hold of who is going to end up controlling the pace of this thing, and that's kind of how it kind of seemed like. So I thought that was like really cool in the way you guys kind of paced that and mapped it out, and then you kind of started off like real like not slow per se, but I think I'm gonna just use that just so I don't get caught up in trying to think of another word. But like you guys started off slow and then you picked it up, and then at the end you had everybody just like that, and I think that was just something real cool to see, man. So I just wanted to dive into that match with you.
I mean, those are huge. I mean, they're easily the most important and best series of matches I've ever had in my life.
Mm-hmm.
The first one we mentioned was really kind of the catalyst of me getting out of the Northwest and people kind of starting to know the name. The second one was literally, they kind of happened in successive summers. So July 2017, 2018, 2019. The first two were in the regular kind of venue in Seattle. The third one was actually at the Showbox, which is it's like a really famous concert venue in Seattle that like Nirvana and Pearl Jam and all these like huge bands played back in the day. And it's like a big like 1,000 cap room. And so getting to wrestle there was huge. I wrestled Jonathan Gresham in that same room, but getting to have the final match with Tim Thatcher in that room was so important to me. And yeah, honestly, getting to work with him, I think really helped me kind of develop who I am as a wrestler now and putting more importance on things that I always kind of knew were important, but now it's sort of like, oh yeah, this is how I want to wrestle. This is who I'm going to be. This is how I'm going to stand out and be different and make my matches feel important. And I learned so much just from working with him. Honestly, I'll let the curtain, I'll peel the curtain back a little bit. That first match with Tim Thatcher in January 2017, I mean, not only did we not, most of the match was not planned. Most of the match was just completely on the fly, except for, like the closing stretches, the real dramatic kind of moments. Right. You kind of like to sort of figure out what's going on. But not only was most of that first match with Tim Thatcher, nothing was planned, we didn't say a single word to each other. The entire time. We didn't speak to each other. It was just acting and reacting. And it was, if this person's trying to twist my arm this way, I know that I need to do this to get out of it and try and, twist his arm this other way, or, little things like that. But when it's someone like him, it's literally like fighting a grizzly bear off of you, because he's so strong and he's I'm a relatively big guy. He's a really big guy. And so, it's just survival, fighting for your life and doing it within the context of pro wrestling. And we've trained and done all these, all these years of kind of building up to it. You sort of know what do you need to do at this moment to tell the story and to kind of engage the crowd. And so, I mean, to me, that they're the most important matches in my life. If I could work like that every night out, I would. But not everyone likes to do that style. Not everyone can do that style. You really need, you have a special kind of bond with the people that can do that style. And so, yeah, those matches are huge to me. They're important. And after we had the final one in Seattle, which we kind of knew going in, okay, this is going to be the last one.
Yeah.
And then, like 2 days before it happened was when wXW reached out to me and was like, yeah, so we're going to have you wrestle Tim in Toronto in a month's time. And so we did have a fourth match last summer in Toronto, which was good, but it didn't have the same kind of history. It didn't have the same kind of emotion as the previous three. So I'm very happy for him for where he's gone. And I never in a million years would have expected Tim Thatcher to be on NXT, but honestly, you need guys like him, especially in like it all comes back to talking about in pandemic wrestling. You need guys who add that level of realism and who work really hard and are really snug with their movements and with their holds and stuff, especially if we're working in front of small crowds or no crowd whatsoever. And I just think he's a throwback. Like, he's an easy person to boo or hate. in modern wrestling. And so I think he'll do well there. I just never expected to see it. So, and I'm glad I got to wrestle him before he went on to bigger and better things.
Yeah, definitely, man. Thatcher, like I think he's helping. I mean, well, I think that NXT, that primary NXT audience, I think they're used to seeing like a variety of stuff opposed to the majority of the Raw or SmackDown audience. But I think Tim Thatcher is really helping like show that there's a different style to professional wrestling as far as like helping the audience see that. And like I think they're doing that kind of, making the fight pit match kind of his thing. And
Yeah.
I think that's very cool. And like you said, I don't think many of us expected Tim Thatcher to be in
No.
WWE, and not because we didn't think he could make it. It just didn't seem like like that was gonna be his thing. But he's doing really well for himself, man. I'm happy to see Tim Thatcher, getting spotlighted like dudes on TV every week. So good for him, man. But Daniel, as we inch closer to 2021. What are some of the things on your bucket list that you can see for the foreseeable future, man? Like matches you want to have, promotions you want to work in. Like what's on the map so far for Daniel Makabe in 2021 that you can see or you can predict at least?
I mean, who knows where the world's going to be, right?
Yeah,
if we're, I don't know when we're going to have wrestling back here in British Columbia. First and foremost, I want to wrestle more in British Columbia. I had 27 matches this year, and only like 3 or 4 of them were in British Columbia, which is crazy to me. I live here. I should wrestle here more often. So, but on that same note, I want to wrestle elsewhere in Canada. I want to wrestle some of the best guys in Ontario and Quebec and across the country, like someone who I met in the last little while who I think has kind of become criminally underrated because he can't wrestle in the U.S. currently is Speedball Mike Bailey.
Yeah.
Who is in Quebec, and so I'd love to go back east and wrestle him. Tyson Dukes is someone in Ontario whose work I really respect, and I did get to wrestle him this year, but we only had like a 7 or 8 minute match. I'd love to have a 30-minute match with him. I think we easily could do that. So I want to go back to Europe. I love it in Europe. I've got friends over there. Obviously, I'd love to go back for wXW, for future 16 carats or whatever kind of festivals they could have me over for. Ambition, obviously. There's a natural connection to bring me back over for one of those. There's a promotion in England that I worked for called Riptide Wrestling, who have some of the most beautiful production values. You can watch all of their work on independent wrestling TV. I worked for them about a year ago, and I'd love to go back for them. But there's other promotions in England that I've never gone to work for. So
I was just going to add in. You mentioned Riptide and their production value. They kind of remind me of like Defy a little bit, like kind of how like they have that like cinematic, like smoky, like you know what I'm saying? It's just different, man. I just want to add that in for you.
There's a definite connection there too. So as far as the US goes, I mean, there's big promotions that I haven't gone to work for in the US. I had a single match for Beyond Wrestling, but they're one of the biggest in the independents in the US. Action Wrestling in Georgia is a promotion that I'd love to work for. There's if there's a state I haven't been to, I'd love to go there. I really, it came up recently on the timeline that I want to wrestle in Texas. And there's heavy metal wrestling in San Antonio, and other promotions, that I'd love to work for when it's safe to do so.
Right.
One thing that was unfortunate that, one of your most recent guests, Anthony Henry, was both of us were going to be in this year's Scenic City Invitational, which is an annual tournament in the Chattanooga, Tennessee area. And so I won last year's and was going to go into this year's as the defending champion. And it was quite disappointing to not be able to do that. But I love, I've got lots of friends in that area now, the Scenic City promotion in Chattanooga, Southern Underground Pro in Nashville, obviously, is a home away from home. And some of my best friends in independent wrestling are based in Nashville. So I want to go back there. But honestly, there's so many big promotions. I've never wrestled in California. There's so many things left to do. I'm not getting any younger, but there's still so much to do, so that when we get back to normal, I mean, if people have me and they want to see me there, I'm going to try my best to be there. I'm in it. I want to do as much as I can and see as much as I can and wrestle people. There's too many amazing independent wrestlers out there to name, some of whom I've wrestled. A big one for me, I've never wrestled Alex Shelley, and we've become kind of buddies on Twitter over the last year.
Yeah.
So that's a big one that's going to happen in 2021 somewhere, most likely in Black Label Pro, so in kind of the Indiana area. But I had a match with Jonathan Gresham in early 2019. That's a huge one. We were supposed to rematch this past year at WrestleMania, the same weekend that I was supposed to have the Fred Yehi rematch. And so I got to wrestle Gresh again, because for my money, Gresham is the best technical wrestler in the world, and I got to prove myself against the best. So, 2021, how much are we going to be able to travel? Maybe not until the end of the year, I'm thinking it's going to be. But when everything's safe and we're able to do so, I want to be everywhere and anywhere that people want to see me. Absolutely.
Yeah, like I was predicting like maybe summer 2021, like we start to see,
Yeah,
maybe it goes back to what it was, but like I think the expectations for like as soon as 2021 rolls around, things are going to just snap back like right to previously what it was. I think we need to
no,
lower those expectations a little bit.
We gotta pump the brakes a little bit, and especially like here, like I mentioned, here in British Columbia, our regulations are pretty strict, and so maybe shows will be running in the U.S., but I won't be able to be a part of them, unfortunately. So we'll see, summer, fall, sometime in then. But it gives me time to get back into shape, and it gives me time to get some of the ring rust off. And then I'll be back and hopefully killing it on the indies like I was before all of this kind of happened. So
there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Daniel, please, man, if anything that you got that you want to plug, merchandise, music, social media, everything, floor is yours. I'm gonna make sure to plug it in the description of this video.
I appreciate it, man. Follow me on Twitter or Instagram. It's at Daniel Makabe, DanielMakabe. That's where you're going to see, if I come out with a new t-shirt or if I'm plugging something my bands are doing. If you don't follow me on Twitter already, obviously I post a musical recommendation of the day, because what else am I going to do? I'm not wrestling currently. And yeah, you'll hear about, if I'm up to anything, that's where you'll hear about it. So that's the best thing to do, is follow me there. And like I said, man, Andrew, I appreciate the opportunity. This has been a lot of fun. The time's flown by. I told you I was a talker and that the time was going to fly by. And so, yeah, no, it's been cool, man. Thank you for having me.
No, I appreciate you taking the time to do this, man. It was great. Like you said, the time flew. I don't know how much time this, but I'll make sure I check it after, but I'm pretty sure it was a smooth time, man. And hopefully I didn't take too much of it. So I thank you again, man. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm Andrew Thompson of the Andrew Thompson Interviews YouTube channel. This is the one and only Daniel Makabe. Hopefully we get him back here in the States very, very soon. Daniel, we will see you soon, my man. I'm definitely sure. 2021, Daniel Makabe is coming back. I'm telling you, I'm putting that out there right now. Daniel,
I appreciate it, man.
Thank you for your time, man. And I'll catch you later.
Thank you.